but Chick-fil-A is especially unique in, not, brother, what's going on over there? Are you pouring some water by your microphone?
My fault. Getting a little parched.
Go ahead, take a sip. I'll take a sip of my tea.
All right, cool.
Hey friends, hey, welcome back to the show. It's Nikayla here, and today in the guest chair, I am so excited to bring you this conversation with Kareem Edwards. Kareem is not only a dear friend, but he is just an inspirational side hustler turned full-time entrepreneur. And yes, by the way, surprise! This year, I am introducing some special conversations with some inspirational men side hustlers in my circle who I know can impart such amazing wisdom with everyone. So first up is Kareem, and let me share a little bit of his background. Kareem Edwards is a native New Yorker, born and raised in Far Rockaway, Queens. From a young age, Kareem has always been determined to better his life and the lives of those around him. He is a first-generation scholar, and after college, he returned to NYC to begin his career on Wall Street, working at Lehman Brothers investment bank. And after several successful years in financial services, Kareem was even recognized by Crain's Chicago business as a part of its inaugural 20 in their 20s, a list of outstanding 20-somethings who are integral to the next generation of Chicago's leadership in their respective fields. Then in 2013, Kareem left financial services to pursue a Master of Business Administration, MBA, at the Ross School of Business, the University of Michigan. That's where I met Kareem. And upon graduating, he was recognized as a 2015 top MBA to watch by Poets and Quants. Post-MBA, he joined Kraft Heinz as a marketer, and there he led breakthrough innovations and launched the company's first platinum product and brand, Just Crack an Egg, which was listed as a top breakthrough innovation by Nielsen. Then after Kraft Heinz, Kareem worked at Google for several years, and we talk about this in the episode where his side hustling really took shape. There he partnered with e-commerce companies to build and strengthen their brands and achieve their business objectives. Recently, with his business partner, he sold R&B House Party, a creative agency dedicated to creating inclusive spaces for multicultural creatives to live authentically, to Blavity Inc. Kareem is now a franchise owner of a Chick-fil-A in Chicago, which opened in January of 2021. Through his experiences in various industries, he is able to leverage his skills to empower his team, serve his community and guests, while achieving his business objectives. As I mentioned in today's episode, I think this conversation in a nutshell is just part of the reasons I feel so blessed to have gone back to get my MBA at Michigan, because of the awesome people that I have met. And I hope this conversation will bless you. If you've been interested in franchising, if you want to learn more about what it looks like at Chick-fil-A, or just always want to hear from a unique and amazing side hustler, this is the episode for you. Let's get right into it. All right, Kareem, welcome to the guest chair.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here.
It is an honor to have you, my friend, my brother. And it's only fitting that you are one of the first men, other than Moyo, who's ever been in the guest chair so far. But when I was thinking of who to interview to talk about franchising and talk about how to go from side hustler to being a franchise entrepreneur, I honestly, sincerely couldn't think of anybody else I was interested in talking about, just because I know your story and it's so inspirational for me. So I said, let's go ahead and make a special exception.
Listen, you introduced me to podcasts, and the fact that you have a podcast around Black women, you know, I am a stand for Black women. Yes. So to be here, I don't want to take up too much space, but it's truly an honor to see where you're at now and the space you created for all these women that my daughters look up to. So thank you.
I really appreciate that. All right. So let's tell the world more about you, because you are a really dynamic person. I remember when I was connecting you to Selena, who she might come up more in this episode. Part of my email was, Selena, he is one of the best men I know. So that is how I feel about you. So tell me, how do you get from Far Rockaway, Queens to finance, right? Because that's the first chapter of your story.
Yeah. So born and raised in Far Rockaway, Queens, both mother and father from Trinidad and Tobago. I'll be out there next week for Carnival. Yeah. So true story, my first concert ever was at Nassau Coliseum in Long Island. And it was Jay-Z Hard Knock Life Tour. And I was sitting way in the back. I'm excited to be there. And it had this guy who was sitting a few rows in front of me. And he had a briefcase. I was like, why does he have a briefcase? Okay. And when the song Money Ain't Thing came on, I kid you not, it's the first time I've ever seen it. He took out stacks of money and just threw it in the air. And I'm a young kid from Far Rockaway. Listen, they called me. And I'm like, hey, buddy, what do you do for a living? He's like, I work on Wall Street. That's what I'm going to do.
This was real money? This was real money.
It was real money. However, now that I'm older, more mature, if he was in finance the way he was, he should not be sitting next to me or near me, right? Like, this is a kid who's working 2 jobs, coaching diners, saving up his little pennies to go to Jay-Z. And he's sitting like 2 rows ahead of me. Right. But nonetheless, that was like the inspiration, like, oh, there's a career in finance. What does that look like? So I didn't know what in depth or detail was finance, but I knew I wanted to get into finance, particularly Wall Street. So then I got extremely fortunate, won a scholarship called the Posse Foundation that sent me and 9 other students from New York City to DePaul University, middle of nowhere, Indiana, majored in mathematics. And then Posse, they don't only send you to universities such as DePaul, Vanderbilt, Brandeis, and even Michigan now. They also help you with finding an internship and career as well. So Posse created a partnership with Wall Street with the firms such as Goldman, Lehman, Bloomberg, and so on. So first year, I think the first week, I went to the Career Center like, hey, I'm looking for an internship. I came with the 5-button suit, like I'm ready to go, got my resume ready, worked with Posse, DePaul to get my first internship going in my sophomore year at Bloomberg LLP. Then second and third year, worked at Lehman Brothers, and then got an offer to return back upon graduating. So it took kind of like the mathematics background, applied it to finance, and started my career on Wall Street back in 2007.
Wow. How did that feel for you once you got there? Was it a dream realized, or was it like, ooh, it's not what I thought?
At first, it was a dream in the sense of I was the first one to go to college, graduate college, and then have this new kind of career. So leaving, I was interning, living in Far Rockaway, taking the A train all the way up to Wall Street. So every day, just kind of seeing my neighborhood and going to this new world. It's like, oh, wow, like I'm making it, right? Yeah. Over time, it's like, this is a different type of atmosphere and culture. And keep in mind, Lehman went bankrupt in 2008. So just being a part of that whole debacle and seeing how that went was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to kind of see and afford, like, right on the line, how the world operates, which kind of encouraged, empowered me to kind of grow up a little bit faster, even in that culture, to see how we could rebound and reshape our team and so on. So grateful for the time. But after about 4 to 5 years of working in finance, I'm like, okay, this is not who I am. This is not the culture I want to be around. How do I pivot?
How do you pivot when the money is good, right? And you're a kid from Far Rockaway.
Yeah, money's good. First one to work in like a white collar job. So I was looking at different companies to get out, but take that skill set in a different industry. But anytime and every time I apply, like, oh, you have a math background, you worked on Wall Street, we have this great finance job for you. I'm like, I don't want to do finance. I want to do strategy. And then a friend of mine, Jordan Sutton, he's like, why don't you pursue getting an MBA? And I'm like, bro, I love basketball, but I'm not going to the league. No clue. Like, I went to college. Why is anyone going to school after college? It didn't make sense unless you're becoming a doctor.
You're like, I did what I was supposed to do already.
Yeah, I'm done. He's like, no, MBA is a master's in business. I'm like, aha, okay. So my essay for grad school was about nonprofit management. I was so, I don't want to say disgusted, but tired of the finance world. I wanted to take the skills and how can I help serve the community or impact the community? So like, can we create some kind of community bonds, things of that nature, or social bonds that help the community? So my whole essay was about nonprofit, and then got into Ross, met you there. And then from speaking to people like yourself and so many other folks, like, okay, how can I take my passion of solving business needs? How can I take my passion for community impact? And what does that look like? And that was kind of my way to pivot out of finance into X. At the time, wasn't sure what that was.
I didn't know you were thinking, or at least writing. We put any old thing on our essays, though. Whatever was going to get us in the door.
Yeah.
I don't even know what was on my essays. It was about marketing though, so I'll give myself that. But
I'm gonna go back
it's
to
so
Far
funny.
Rockaway now.
Right. I did not know that about you. But you're right. We met there. And that's one of the things when people ask me about the MBA, especially now that you're an entrepreneur, I'm sure you get this question. Yeah. And for me, it's really hard to summarize, but the greatest takeaway that I got from business school was the people. I'm talking about I went in, I had my set number of friends and family members, and I left with family. I left with new family members. And to be able to have these kind of conversations, not just you and me, but just anybody, any day of the week, any night of the week, just be like figuring this out together, but learning from people with such dynamic backgrounds. Like it's just, you never get that kind of experience in life, like 2 years like that, to just figure your life out while also just meeting the most amazing people.
Plus 1,000. So hopefully I'm not jumping the gun, but my introduction to Chick-fil-A was through a fellow alum at Michigan who worked at Chick-fil-A Support Center. So there's a group me of probably about 65 Black men who graduated from Michigan Ross from 2005 to about 2016.
Wow.
And then this one day, this guy posted like, hey, does anyone want to learn more about Chick-fil-A? If so, reach out to me. I never met him before, but he's an alum. I'm an alum. We're in this group chat. I was currently working at Kraft Heinz, and at Kraft or CPG, you know, they tell you at Michigan, like, hey, if you want to become an entrepreneur, go work CPG. You can own a P&L.
I was going to ask you about that.
That's why. You can meet with all the different kind of internal, external team to figure out how to run a business. Like, okay, great. This would be like a soft way to kind of do it. Sure enough, I get the offer to work at Kraft. Before I start, Kraft got acquired by Heinz, who was like a zero-based budget kind of company, heavy on finance. Back to finance, here I go. So I'm annoyed. Yeah. So I'm at Kraft doing more finance than like CPG and marketing. So when he sent that message, I'm like, oh, this is it. Okay, cool. I could take my skill of business, finance, marketing, strategy, whatever it may be. And the initial thing was to become a consultant for all the franchisees. It's like, okay, if I meet with them, I can help their business and therefore help their communities. So now I'm touching all these communities, making an impact by leveraging my background in business. So I started meeting with different kind of owner operators. And by speaking with them, I'm like, wait a minute, this is cool, this whole business consultant, but the true reward is being the owner operator so I can make the impact I want. And then I pivot from business consultant to the owner operator route from speaking to current and existing owner operators.
So you were initially thinking of working for Chick-fil-A, but then as part of getting to know that role, you started to hear more about and learn more about the operator side of the business.
Yeah. So for me, it's like, how can I do research? Let me go meet with these owners to see how this relationship of an owner, me as a consultant would work, and how can I serve them to therefore serve the community. And through that research, I'm like, oh, no. This is not what I want to do. I want to become the owner operator.
So let me unpack that a little bit. Now, at this point, you're at Kraft Heinz. You're getting to know more about this owner-operator side. And by the way, owner-operator, is that Chick-fil-A specific language? Like this is the franchisees are owner-operators?
They definitely use it, but McDonald's will use it. So depending on the company, they may use that title, or it could be franchisee. But tomato.
Okay. And before you went full-time into this franchisee role with Chick-fil-A or, you know, having your own franchise, you did a stint. You did a stint at Google, right? So what made you move over to Google while you were figuring out your way into the franchise world?
Yeah. So the interview process for Chick-fil-A could be extensive and long at times. At the time when I was interviewing, it was probably about 2,500 stores across the country. So as they start opening more stores and figure out where they're interviewing to kind of build that queue up, but it wasn't like this rapid growth.
Okay.
So I'm interviewing, I'm at Kraft Heinz, and then someone from Google asked me to go speak at Google about leadership. So I went, I'm like, all right, cool, go chat. And I'm telling my story, Far Rockaway and this, that, and the third MBA. And then one of the directors was like, have you ever considered working at Google? True story. Back in my head, I was like, no, I don't want to do this. But you never say no, right? Like that's not the professional thing to do. So I'm like, yeah, let's grab coffee. And then we had a coffee chat. I'm like, okay, this tech thing is growing a lot. I heard a lot about it in business school. There's an opportunity to do some kind of consulting strategy work. All right. It can't be worse than my time at Kraft, hopefully way better. And while I'm interviewing for Chick-fil-A, cool. This would be a great way to kind of learn a new skill such as tech. Mm-hmm. And then to hedge myself in the event that franchising didn't work out, I'm at Google. All right, makes sense. So went to Google. So I would go to work at Google. I would get there at 7 o'clock. I would leave there about 4 o'clock. And this is when Jordan was just born. I would then go home, check on Jordan, Janelle, whatever it may be. And then I would go work at Chick-fil-A on the cash register and the back on fries to truly understand, like, what am I getting myself into? What is this business dynamic? How do I kind of lead this team? How do I grow sales, whatever it may be, or even interview and find talent? And then come home, graveyard shift with the little one who didn't want to sleep, and then take a quick nap and then go back to work at Google. And that was kind of like the weeks and weeks of my life for a period of time.
Dedication. Was that part of the process? Like they said, you have to go and work here, or you did that on your own?
I did it on my own for two reasons. One, I know I'm leaving Google, which everyone like, oh, this is the dream company. So if I'm going to make that pivot, like, how do I make sure I'm feeling confident about my decision? I need to understand the worst part about this business and hopefully the best part. And then two, because I was an external person, meaning I never worked at a Chick-fil-A. I didn't come from corporate Chick-fil-A. They have a leadership program. I didn't go through that. How can I show them that I'm willing, able, and have the grit to leave this cushy tech job to be on fries if needed? It's like, all right, they can't have any reservation about, is he really willing to do whatever it takes? So that was kind of my way of ensuring that was not a concern from that side.
Nice. Did you apply just as a regular person? Like, you didn't tell them what you were doing, or did you kind of tell them what you were doing for that actual job?
This was one of the people I was meeting with beforehand about the relationship between the owner, operator, and consultant. And then when I told him, like, hey, I actually want to become an owner, he's like, all right. I'm like, well, I want to get more experience, understand what it looks like. So we kind of created a plan like, okay, let's focus on interviewing for the next 2 weeks or 3 weeks. And then let's focus on operation. Okay, put me where the team members at, right? Start from the bottom. So it was times when I'm on cash register at 6 p.m. Like, man, someone from Michigan Ross or Google's about to come in here and look at me. And I just got to tell them, like, hey, you know, diapers are expensive. Look. And they don't know what I'm doing, right? Like, I'm like, it is what it is. So I was just out there working all the spots and then trying to tie everything in. Like, okay, if this is my store, how would I do it? How would I make sure the guest experience is great? How do I make sure my team members are feeling loved on? How do I make sure that we're growing sales? Whatever that issue was, allowed me to kind of play around a little bit more with actual kind of business and, again, details of the team and so on.
Did you look at any other franchises, or did you just solely focus on Chick-fil-A?
No, I looked at McDonald's, Subway, CD1 dry cleaning. So I was looking at different companies, and what drew me to Chick-fil-A, and Chick-fil-A was new to me, right? Because growing up in New York, there was no Chick-fil-A.
No.
So what drew me to Chick-fil-A was, one, I truly appreciate that they cared about the whole family proposition. So as I was entering fatherhood, Janelle and I was together roughly about, call it 15 years at that time. I'm like, all right, I don't want to jump into a business and do well in the business, and then I'm a terrible father, a terrible husband. So the fact that they care so much about family, I'm like, all right, this is good. Two, the first time I had Chick-fil-A was probably a year before business school. And like, oh, wow, like people eat chicken for breakfast. This is crazy, but it was so good. I'm like, okay. So while other brands, other company, I was not a consumer of it. I could not eat it. I didn't believe it. So for me to be passionate or sell or own something that I don't believe in, it just wouldn't work.
That was gonna be hard.
Especially coming from like Wall Street, where I don't own this product, but if I don't believe in the culture, I could do well, but I'm not going to do great. I'm not going to be happy. So the fact that I'm like, all right, I could consume this product, I could give it to my kids, got me excited. So those are the two main reasons. And then three, if I'm being really honest, the capital to enter was much lower than the McDonald's of the world, which I'm like, okay.
What was that amount?
Yeah, so Chick-fil-A model is different than, let's compare it to like McDonald's. McDonald's is an equity play. You own the store. So God forbid, if I get hit by a bus, I could pass it on to my spouse with kids. Chick-fil-A is more of an agreement where you don't own outright that building. You're kind of in a partnership with Chick-fil-A Inc. and then you split profit. So you have the license / operator fee of $10,000, and then you have other fees, and that truly depends on the business that you're running, right? So let's say I open January, I need to hire X amount of people beforehand to train and get ready. So there's going to be salary. There's going to be other items within the store that you need. So that amount's going to vary depending on what store, where you're at, and how you want to kind of start the store and the business.
And then as you were going through this process, you mentioned that, there's also that process of figuring out, okay, what store is going to be opening? Is there a location that we are going to be building that makes sense? At that point, were you open to moving anywhere, or were you just looking for them to create a Chicago location that you could own?
At the time, open to moving, but my priority was still Chicago. So I was looking at Chicago, LA, and Austin at the time. Yeah, I'm like, all right, the weather is better in Austin. I'm tired of these cold winters. LA, I got people out there. The weather's great. Cool. And then as we kind of continue to have the conversation, it narrowed down to Chicago. And I remember telling him, like, listen, I live in the South Loop. I think it's a great opportunity to open up in the South Loop. To me, South Loop is like one of those few neighborhoods in Chicago that's not only diverse, but inclusive. So I'm like, all right, this would be great. We could do a lot of impact to the community. And they started narrowing down the list of neighborhoods they were looking at. And it so happened that South Loop was on that list. So when I was speaking with them, like, I'm grateful for everything thus far, but South Loop or no go for me. Like, this is where I want to be. Yeah, reckless.
Wow.
Like, this is like, I live in this community, right? My daughter's go to daycare in this community. Like, if I could get back to this community that, and keep in mind, Janelle and I moved to Chicago in late 2008. And we moved to the South Loop. So we seen the growth in the South Loop. Like, this is how I could truly give the world by owning this business and doing what I need to do to make sure I serve everyone. So it just worked out.
Amazing. Yeah, because
we did not
it's not like you're from Chicago, but you developed this real love for this community. And then, but then also God had plans for you there, right? And look what's going on.
Yeah.
Am I getting this correct? Are you the first Black Chick-fil-A owner?
First Black Chick-fil-A owner in Chicago proper.
In Chicago. Okay. Chicago
proper. Yeah.
And so, Kareem, you are the first Black Chick-fil-A owner in Chicago.
Yes.
How does that feel?
It's one of those, I'm grateful for the opportunity, but not content by or excited to even say the first one, right? Like, to me, it's like, how do we get past that first? Because there's so many of us. So like, all right, cool. I'm here. Right. And I think Barack Obama said, like, when you're at the table, you need to make room for others. So like, all right, now it's time to get to work. So even there's about to be a second location in Chicago in like Hyde Park. That person is a brother, right? Who I've been helping and mentoring for like the last year and a half. So like, all right, cool. How do we get more space for us to kind of join and have this opportunity to serve and be a part of this amazing brand? So yes, and the first, but definitely not the last. And hopefully more to come.
And leaving the door open. I love that. So this whole process is new for me. And I'm trying to understand, if you hadn't met that guy, right? If you're just an average person and you're like, you know what? I want to be in the number. Chick-fil-A, you're opening new locations. Think of me, right? I saw that there's a young lady, a Black woman in the Bronx now, I believe it is. Or is it Brooklyn? Yeah. So both. I'm like,
Brooklyn and Bronx.
Put me on the list. Okay. How do you get on the list? How do you get considered and qualify yourself to even be interviewed for this kind of process?
Yeah. So I think there's a crazy stat that says it's easier to get into Harvard than to get a Chick-fil-A, right? So the demand is there.
Yep.
So how do you get part of that demand and actually kind of get qualified? Historically and currently, there's two different ways. One, you have the internal process, which means you're going through that leadership development program. That program, LDP, you get selected and then you travel across the country opening different stores, helping to open different stores. And then when you're done with that program, you are then kind of placed in a queue or a pool that when they open further stores, you can start having that conversation on how you can get selected as owner operator. Majority of people go through that process to get selected. I'm talking like 92%, probably 95%. Then the external path, which is roughly 5%, are those without traditional Chick-fil-A experience who may come from B school or a general manager at Walmart, wherever it may be. You will then apply online to express interest. You then start having that screener. If you're lucky, you then have some kind of virtual meeting, and then it starts that way. I think Chick-fil-A is starting to do more outreach and start meeting different people from different areas as they grow across the country and expand in different parts. Historically, it was more of a suburb play, but now it's entering more like downtown cities and so on. So they're kind of doing more outreach to make sure they're finding a good partner that could serve that community as well.
I was smiling a bit when you said apply online to express interest. I was like, the Alpha Phi Alpha is jumping out.
Nice.
Express interest.
Letter is similar.
You gotta start somewhere, right?
Yeah.
You gotta put your name in the hat.
You haven't came to how many events? Oh,
right,
okay.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, we haven't seen you. We haven't seen you. Anyway, sorry. If y'all don't understand, I'm sorry. Once you finally, what was it like when they were like, okay, you are going to be the owner of the South Loop location? How did that feel?
There's videotapes and pictures somewhere, but I lost all street cred. I was crying. Like, man, because it was like a 3.5 year process, right? So flew down to Atlanta to the support center headquarters, and you're still interviewing that day, right? So then a part of that interview, you go to an office that was started in the founder's office, right? So just having that feeling, oh my God. And then thinking about the last 3.5 years, again, newborn, going to work at Google, go work at a Chick-fil-A for 3 to 5 hours, come home, rock the baby a little bit, wake up, do it again. So all these sacrifices that I was making, then looking back from, and this is the part that's kind of crazy, looking back on Far Rockaway, I was in a newsletter when I was in high school. And in that newsletter, this is 2001, it said like Kareem aspires to be a restaurant owner and focus on business. So to see that happen took 20 years, but not like a straight path, right? I was hysterically crying. Snot. It was ugly. So just grateful for the opportunity, grateful to kind of serve, grateful for my wife who supported me, just gratitude and excitement.
Yes. So just so many beautiful aspects of your story. And something that came to mind as you were speaking just now, too, is the ultimate side hustler of it all. Because you're working for this major company, Google, and you're side hustling. You're like, you know what your ultimate goal is, but then you're still making sure you collect that check. What was your strategy at the time to balance it all, but still show up at work and keep that job?
Grace and grit, knowing like, hey, this is the vision, the goal, but don't lose yourself in the process, right? So give yourself grace. I'm probably not gonna be the best husband right now, but we know what we're working towards. At Google, maybe you're gonna get a bad comment every now and then, but like, okay, you know why. But also grit, like this is a privilege to work at Google, to pursue Chick-fil-A. Both of these are privileged. So don't get cocky or comfortable because there's only so many people who have the opportunity to pursue either or. And now you're pursuing both. So just grit and grace and prayers, I guess, just to make sure you're not going crazy.
And they wanted you to stay, right? It's not like you were bombing at your job.
Yeah.
They wanted you to stay, that you were doing a great job.
So the goal, leaving Google, like, okay, again, first generation scholar, like, all right, this Chick-fil-A thing, it should work. Hopefully it worked, but it may not work, right? And we already had a kid. So we're used to a certain lifestyle. I want better for my kid. So I'm like, okay, my goal at Google the last, call it 8 to 12 months, like I need to bust my butt. So when I leave, and if I decide to leave, they're asking me to stay. So when that time came, privilege problem again, they were like, all right, I think it was like September before I opened the store, like, hey, what is happening? Why don't you take the rest of the year off and then you can reevaluate and let us know in January. Yeah. I'm like, you sure? Okay, cool.
Wow.
So took the rest of the year off and just kind of made sure, like, is this right? But I was grateful in the sense that the hard work at the Google side, in the event, whatever reason, especially opening during a pandemic, if things didn't work out, it seemed like I had an opportunity to return back to Google and work there. Privilege, problem.
Yes, I love that. You need your own handbook of how to side hustle and not get fired, how to side hustle and have them beg you to stay. Like, that is a real gift. And I'm glad that you had that, because then you end up being a franchise owner in the middle of a pandemic, right? So tell us how that was. How did you even navigate those times?
Literally probably the hardest thing I ever done professionally. We opened January of 2021. I want to say the back half of 2020, I lost 5 people to COVID. So mentally, I was in this place of just darkness and funk, in the sense of, I have my wife, I have my young daughter. We lost 5 people, my grandmother to cousins, uncles. How do I look going out into this world and bringing back this disease or this condition to my family and potentially them dying? Because to me, that was real. I already lost 5 people. So I had so much anxiety going into it. So I was trying to figure out, how do I protect them while running a business? And that first year was just rough. I mean, you're talking, everyone was getting robbed, but there were days that we wouldn't get trucked because the company that we worked with didn't have drivers. So no one cares about, like, hey, you didn't get your truck delivery. I want my Chick-fil-A sauce. Like, where is it? So I would have to drive to other owners, and we would kind of barter and exchange, like, what do you have? What do you need? Okay, cool. So I'm spending so much time away from operation, I can't even focus on the operation. So I was working 5 a.m. to midnight, days upon weeks, because staffing was an issue, delivery of truck was an issue. It's a new business, so you're trying to figure out the culture. So you're trying to put out all these fires at once. It was crazy. But now, 4 years later, right, when things happen, you're kind of laughing like, bruh, it's not 21. Like, we survived 21, so now we're able to thrive. So in 22, we grew about 42%, and then 23, 22%. So all this growth, I think, really stemmed from just going through it in 21. Even in 22, we learned so much lessons on how to maneuver, how to rebound, how to kind of pivot on the fly that you weren't accustomed to, 1, in that industry, 2, within Chick-fil-A, 3, in the world, right? So I would never say like 21 was the worst thing, but it was tough. But it allowed me to kind of be a better leader because of it. Similar to my time on Wall Street working at Lehman when it went bankrupt. So I think having those experiences where, like, oh man, stuff hit the fan, and how to respond and rebound, it's been something that I've been able to learn and kind of grow and master because it's been happening through my career so often.
And when you say the growth, you're referring to revenue?
Yes, in sales revenue.
This episode is sponsored by Skillshare. The online learning community is offering Side Hustle Pro listeners a free trial of premium membership. Now, many of you already know that one of my biggest side hustle hacks is Skillshare. I've been using Skillshare for years now, and that's because it's the truth. I love it so much, I've created a free short course to give you the play-by-play on how to launch your own high-quality video podcast. It's called The Ultimate Beginner's Guide to Podcasting, and if you've ever wondered how I get the clear, crisp video you see on the Side Hustle Pro podcast without going into a fancy studio, this is the course for you. The Ultimate Beginner's Guide to Podcasting is a course where I'm sharing my favorite budget-friendly equipment picks, my step-by-step training on recording and editing a podcast, and how to create engaging episodes and eye-catching social media clips. The best part, the course is free if you go to sidehustlepro.co/Skillshare. So are you ready to get started? Visit sidehustlepro.co/Skillshare to enroll. Again, Side Hustle Pro listeners, you'll get 1 month free of premium membership over at sidehustlepro.co/Skillshare. Again, that's 1 month free over at sidehustlepro.co/Skillshare. As you were starting out, what does Chick-fil-A actually give you? Like, the location, was it ready? The staff, did you have any leads on hiring people?
Yeah.
How did you running?
Yeah, so Chick-fil-A will partner with you. They will take the lead on the build out.
Hmm.
But anything in terms of people, that's all on you as the owner operator.
Okay.
So if you need to hire from a team member to directors, good luck. And that's why it was so challenging because no one was outside, right? No one was
Yeah.
looking for jobs, whether it was PPV loans, whatever the loans were called, or people were just naturally sick and dying, which was a real thing.
Mm.
It was hard to find talent. It was hard to train talent. It was hard to kind of just grow in that aspect.
And so here's where the business school experience came in, right? How
Yeah.
did all of your experience throughout your life, like you've done finance, marketing, you've done sales, now operations,
Yeah.
how did all of that come together to help you lead this business?
Yeah. The one thing I love about Michigan, I think often folks from Michigan, they would tell you that the hard skills is not the finance, right? Or even
Right.
operation. The hard skill is the people.
Yep.
Like, how do you incentivize, motivate, lead people who may not want to do what you're doing or understand your vision or even care about your vision? So I think Michigan gave me that tool to like, okay, how do I teach and show my team that I'm here, that I'm
Hmm.
willing to serve them, and therefore hopefully they can serve the community? That would be the first thing. So really, and I'm talking about population people where they probably were forgotten in their life at some point or consistently, right?
Right.
So I had to understand as much as I want to pour love into them and on them and serve them, it would take time because it was a trust I had to build. So the first thing was just understanding the people side. The second thing was grace, going back to that. Like, it's not going to happen overnight. We're kind of surviving this pandemic. And then three, that's when the other skills as finance, like, okay, where's the most profitable channel in our business? Okay, do we need to turn off another channel so team members are not overwhelmed, so the guests are having a good experience? And then
Yeah.
kind of building that plan to make sure you're not just surviving every day. It's going to be some rough days, but how do we kind of thrive and celebrate those? So once we mastered one or two channels, okay, do you feel comfortable with the third channel? Let's test it out. And if that test and learn looks good, okay, let's turn it all the way on. So that was kind of an approach to survive and then start thriving towards the end of 21, top of 22.
And you hear a lot with, like, especially, I guess, the McDonald's model. I've heard a lot of people who will have multiple franchises, and that's kind of like their badge of honor. Like, we own this many
Yeah.
in this area. Is it similar with Chick-fil-A? Like, is your goal to own multiple properties?
My goal, Kareem Edwards' goal, is not to own multiple properties, right? My goal is to have as much
I'm
time
laughing,
to
y'all,
get
because of his reactions. And this is why you got to watch it on YouTube. Facial expressions. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah. I want to serve my community, but I want to be the most corniest dad there is. So I need time to do that, right?
Yep, yep.
I think I told all y'all in business school,
Yeah.
my goal was to be a stay-at-home dad, right?
Right. That was what he used to say all the time.
So if I can own this business, serve the community, and then have time to do X, a part of X is going to be to attend any and all events for my kids or for my wife and I travel. That's the ideal kind of win. That's the return for me. And then also, I think, to me, it's not about how many stores, but at the end of the day, it's like how much revenue and then how much profit.
Yep.
So I won't go into details, but Chick-fil-A could probably do the size of several McDonald's, right? So it sounds sexy and cool to have several stores, but then that's also how many staff and how many headaches. Like, give me one that's running right with a strong top line and a healthy bottom line, then life is good. Life is great.
Yeah, I completely understand that, because that's something you start to have to deal with too when you're growing in corporate and you're like, wait, how many people y'all want me to manage in this? Where are the roles where I can make more and manage zero?
Right.
Where's that at? Right?
My current payroll is 96 people.
Woo!
So to think about like another store, okay, or a third
I'm trying
store
to wrap
is like,
my mind around that. Like, what does that entail? Because I don't, like, 96 people don't work there, like on the cash register, for example, right? Yeah, at the same time.
Yeah. So at any given point or during our busiest hour, we might have roughly 30 to 33 people on the clock. And we have a drive-through. So, you got folks outside in the drive-through, inside, then you have the kitchen, then you might have directors or managers or general managers, all to run this business.
Yep.
So if you think about, everyone will at least have one day off, and then you have Sundays off, and then you have some folks who are part-time. You need to staff accordingly to make sure you get, one, work-life balance, but two, serve the demand that you have. So roughly 96 right now. And then by summer, we'll probably have 110, 115. So
Were
that's
all of them
more than enough
hired
people.
by you, or do you have someone who does that now?
Yeah, so I have an individual who leads all of the recruitment part, but I interview everyone who gets selected. And a part of the reason was, and that kind of thought was, when I think about my life growing up in Far Rockaway, I never had a chance to meet a Chick-fil-A owner or even talk to a Chick-fil-A owner. So I kind of feel like it's my duty, my responsibilities, to at least have that space that young brother or sisters coming up. I'm like, oh, wow, this is real. And like, yeah, I live in Chicago. I live in this historic Black neighborhood. I own this business. And hopefully they can leave inspired, motivated to do whatever that may be. And then second, I think the culture of any business is real. So when they meet with me, I'm like, hey, this is my vision. This is what we're about. So they can never say like, no one told me. Like, no, I told you. This is what we're here for. So if you're not willing to fit with these values, then you probably shouldn't be here. And then third, in that interview process, I get to know a little bit about them. So when I come to the store, it's not like, oh, who's that again? Or number two, like, no, oh, nigga, Jamaican. And I can start playing around, whatever it may be, right? Like, again, that goes back to Michigan, that soft skill, really hard skill. Like, how do you kind of make someone be seen, empowered, so they can follow that vision of yours that you have? So to me, the interview process, while I have a leader who's like truly leading it, I must be a part of it because that sets the tone for whenever they enter, and it saves, protects the culture that we created.
I love that so much because I've been in spaces where I've been at startups where the CEO worked just a row over and he never acknowledged me. You know what that felt like? Like, what does it cost you to acknowledge every single person that you know is here working for you, your company? So, and it's just amazing to me how many people don't think like that. But yeah, I remember that distinctly from, what was that class in Michigan? The management. This is not a Michigan promo, y'all. But I remember I did so well in that class. Management something. I don't know, because I love that stuff, the soft skills.
Yeah, like the whole spider thing.
Yeah,
like
the one with the Everest and he who shall not be named.
Exactly.
Who taught it,
yes, that class and that whole course, right? So,
and what do you think were your blind spots in terms of the hardest lessons you learned? What was your blind spot coming in?
It goes back to people. I was leaving Google, where majority of people come in and they aspire to retire from Google. And now I'm entering a new space, a new industry where some people, I had to learn this the hard way, you go through an interview process, they're excited, and they don't show up for the first day of work, which I'm like, what? This is crazy.
What?
It's real, right? Like, this happens a lot.
Yeah.
To the point where there was one time, and we just started, I had a director who I helped move out here. She's from Queens, right? Like, oh, this is great. Like, all right, cool. Found her place, doing everything I can. And then she walked off, I want to say week 2, without saying anything.
What?
So the industry is so different from the industry I came from, and the way folks kind of maneuver. And I understand now why some people might do it, because to your point, some people are never acknowledged, never receive a thank you. So that's why that trust is so broken, and it takes time. Like, oh, no, we're different here. But in the beginning, I'm like, oh, wow, I got to fix and heal them in order for them to believe what I'm here for in my vision. And that rocked me. I'm thinking like, no, I'm from Far Rockaway, Queens. Like, this is humble beginnings. But they don't see that. They just see Michigan grad, or you worked on Wall Street at Google.
Yeah, you're one of those. You don't know this life. You live somewhere around blah blah blah, right? But,
your parents, single mother.
You bring up an important point too, with like when I would have people I managed in corporate for a bit, it would always surprise me when I had to deal with baggage. I'm wait, that has nothing to do with me. What? Why? Why we have to talk about this? But no, it's because it all matters. Like, if you had this experience with that old boss, you're bringing that wall and that,
without a doubt. So think
reaction
about the
here.
Of retail, right? Retail, QSR. One, you probably have guests or consumers who come in and think you're nothing because you work retail. Or you may have a boss who never said your name or said thank you
Yep.
or show any sign of respect. So you're looking at this kind of transactional. Well, I'm like, no. We're going to create a space so everyone can feel empowered and celebrated and like a family. It's like, okay, that sounds good in theory, but they don't believe it. Rightfully so. So that time factor, I think to me, just rocked like how long it took for them to like, oh no, he's serious about.
Yeah.
And like caring for us and so on. Yeah. It was some dark days with that. Like, wow, they don't believe me. Like, I'm a man of integrity. How do you not believe me? But it wasn't me. It was just their experience and their trauma.
Their lived experience. And so if you had to give any advice to anyone now who wants to pursue what you've pursued and follow your footsteps, what would you say?
One, definitely, I would take still a page from my book and work in that space. So you understand. At the end of the day, you can have a strong team, but if you have 20 call-offs or whatever it may be, you will be on fries, right? So just truly having work in the operation, for one, understand the operation, but two, it also helps with empathy. So how can you lead with care if you don't understand what that person is going through? So that'll be the biggest thing. And then two, I said it a couple of times, but grace, it's not easy. So how do you kind of find peace with not always hitting that 100% or that ball out of the park, because it's going to happen? And then how do you make sure that's not going to define who you are, and you're able to respond and rebound from it and continue to fight that good fight? So that grit and grace will be my biggest recommendation.
Before we jump into the lightning round, I'm curious about also the financial shift, the mental shift from having a steady paycheck to working in a franchise where, to be honest, I don't even know how you get paid anymore, right? What does that look like?
I tell my team all the time, jokingly, like, listen, I'm the last one to get paid if I get paid, right? So you all get paid, but if there's no profit, there's no payment for me, right? So going into this new world, this new industry, I was frugal. And I've been frugal my whole life, but I'm like, okay, what amount do I need? And this is me having a conversation with my financial investor. Like, what amount do I need to maintain the current life I have for 6 months? So that pressure is not being passed to my spouse or my daughter. And therefore, I don't have that pressure on my mind. So definitely did that. It's probably like a little bit, like 8 months at least. Like, all right, cool. We are good on that side. Right. And then two, being really intentional about the numbers. So kind of understanding every aspect of the business. I'm talking like transactions per day, the basket size. So I'm like, okay, if this is happening, what levers can we pull so the business can grow in a better way? If we don't understand it, then we're just here praying, which is not going to work, right? Like, we got to be really intentional and strategic about how to run a business to make sure it is profitable, make sure the guests are having a good experience. Right. So just being diligent about the numbers, every part of it, helped me out a lot, especially not having the experience in this industry, other experience, but not this particular industry.
What levers can you pull? I mean, can you increase foot traffic? Like, you have the branding of Chick-fil-A working in your favor, but what other levers can you pull to change the numbers and increase sales?
Yeah, so if you think about the channels within, let's call it Chick-fil-A, if you have a drive-through, you have carry-out, you have dine-in, you have third-party, you have catering. I don't think a lot of people know that Chick-fil-A does catering, right? Oh. So that's been our highest growth channel. It's probably the smallest in terms of total sales, but highest growth channel. So the first year is like, let's just focus on drive-through, and even it was like drive-through, because keep in mind, no one's coming inside to eat during the pandemic.
Yes.
So okay, we can master that. And then let's continue to expand. So then third party, like, how do you kind of have a presence in third party, whether it's promoting a certain item, whether it's providing some kind of promotion to the guests and so on, to kind of increase that traffic and whatnot. And then after those channels are kind of stable and really running, like, okay, let's start talking about catering. So then tapping in, this is starting to feel like a Michigan promotion, tapping into the Michigan network, right? Like, hey, I know you're at PepsiCo. I know you're at this company. Why don't you incentivize your team to come back by offering Chick-fil-A on every Friday, and then start growing catering that way, right? Or going back to grassroots. Restaurants, in my opinion, you need to taste the food, and that's the best kind of marketing you can have. So we were doing mailers in the neighborhood, like, let's kind of build out this radius, and I need you to walk on this block, that block, give them a free sandwich coupon. So when they come in, they try the sandwich and they have the experience. Hopefully they're coming back. So we went back to the good old Bronx, Jamaica, Queens days when you have people on the flyer. Just give it all that cute Google ads. Nope, we're not doing that. Go give that person a free sandwich. Let them try it.
Right. Yeah. I love that because, sometimes you have to really know how to pull, like you said, these different levers, but you can easily forget stuff in the age of digital where you're just thinking about social media all the time. But no, where are people encountering food or thinking about food, right? That has to be thought about as well. And I did not even think about catering. So I love that you mentioned that because it's almost like you have a premium tier and you got to activate that sometimes. It's not about quantity. It's about really making those connections. All right. So we have to wrap this up, although I could ask you more questions, but we have to go on into the lightning round. You just answer the very first thing that comes to mind. You ready?
I am. Let's do it.
All right. Okay. So what would you say is a resource that has helped you specifically with the franchise journey that you can share with the Side Hustle Pro audience?
I know it's a hot topic, but in terms of like AI, but ChatGPT has been phenomenal for me.
Ooh.
Time is not my friend at times. So I could enter like, hey, draft a marketing strategy that focuses on our vision and our values of X, Y, and Z for audience size of A. And they'll spit something back to me that I could then edit and tweak to fit my plan. So it saves time. It's pulling in from other sources that I may have to spend time researching. So it's been phenomenal. Or even drafting a note to my team, my leaders. It's been great.
It is so great. I never even thought about that, but I use ChatGPT all the time. And you just made me think about if we had that in B school, right? I would have been like, teach me econ because I'm the only one with a 3 on this quiz. Teach me econ, please. Number 2, the case studies. Oh my gosh. Number 2, who is a Black woman entrepreneur who you admire, non-celebrity, who you just really admire their business acumen?
Fawn Weaver, I think is just incredible. What she has been able to do with Uncle Nearest in a short period of time blows my mind. And then similar in terms of what I care about, it seems like she's rocking on the business side without sacrificing her family, right? You see her talk about her husband, Kevin, see her talk about her sisters, her mother. Like that to me is like the epitome leader. So I think she's phenomenal.
I got to have her in the guest chair. So thank you for that reminder.
Yes,
Number
please.
3, what is a non-negotiable part of your day these days?
I don't play around when it comes to either I have to drop or pick my daughters up, and then I must do their hair on Sunday. Those two can't play around with. And then bi-weekly, I got to ensure that we have some sort of date night, just to make sure the home front, the Janelle, Kareem, the corral is healthy and good.
Yes, I love that. I love Team Kareem and Janelle. All right, number 4, what is a personal habit that has significantly helped you in your business journey?
My to-do list is healthy and long, but I always make sure I have a to-do list and kind of reevaluate what's on the list, prioritize to make sure I'm feeling as though I'm making progress. I think sometimes as leaders, as entrepreneurs, you feel overwhelmed. So just having that list, and that basic striking through makes me feel so much better in life.
Absolutely. And then number 5, what is your parting advice for fellow side hustlers who want to be their own boss but are worried about losing that steady paycheck?
I would challenge any and everyone to, one, meet with your financial consultant to see what is realistic or what you can do so you don't feel that pressure all the time financially. And then 2, depending on the business, how do you make sure you have some kind of forecast that shows your numbers of what you need to hit so you're not feeling like you got to keep working in every angle to get every dollar because you're seeing that progress. And then last but not least, celebrate the small wins because this is a marathon. So if you don't have those little markers of saying like, okay, I accomplished this goal, and celebration could be like, I'm about to get this best $8 cup of coffee there is. I don't care. Celebrate it so you can see and feel that progress.
And now I have a bonus question for you because you mentioned doing your daughter's hair and your Kareem and Janelle time. it's funny, this question is always asked of women, right? But okay, how do you realistically these days balance all the hats that you wear? The father, the husband, the business owner hat, the health and wellness, taking care of your health and wellness, all of that. Like, how do you view it these days? How do you approach it? What realistic advice do you have to give to those of us who are still figuring it out?
Yeah. And to be clear, my wellness journey is still a journey, right? I'm still navigating and figuring out. I think I finally came to a point where I understand there's seasons in life. So there might be a season where I'm talking to Janelle, like, listen, I'm about to go in grind mode. Can you hold me down for X amount of time? And she's like, all right, cool. And there's going to be other seasons like, all right, I'm free. I got this. I'm picking up the girls every day. I got to take advantage of this time because I know I have it. Yeah. So understanding that it's not going to be a straight line, might be some lows and then some highs, and embracing it and feeling comfortable with that kind of ride. 2, I finally had a breaking point in 21 where I realized I can't pour from an empty cup. So what am I doing that I'm going to be selfish on to make sure that I feel good and even great so I can pour into my daughters and my wife? Right now, that season is kind of like, all right, I got to get back to working out. So every morning I wake up, I spend 45 minutes. And at this age, it might be 45 minutes of stretching or it might be something else.
That's good. Yeah.
My cup of coffee. And then again, my to-do list. I'm like, okay, cool. I just spent an hour pouring back into myself. I'm ready to pour into my wife, my daughters, my team, my community. If not, I'm just terrible to all these stakeholders or people that I claim to care about.
Yeah. Do you wake up earlier than them? Because that's the season I'm exploring.
I'm like, I'm not bragging about this. I wake up 3:30, 4 o'clock every morning. I'm an early bird, always have been. And now with kids, right? Like that's the only time you really have.
Right. That's the only time you could be sure that they're not waking up. Yeah.
In which sometimes they still do, right? Like,
Right.
So even in that kind of point, I tell Janelle, like, hey, just let me get that morning. Like if you could hold me down from that 3 to 5,
yes.
If the kids do wake up, then I got from 5 to 8:30 every morning, no problem.
And there you have it. I love hearing the perspective from my good friend, the homie, Kareem Edwards. I hope you guys enjoyed it as well. And where can people connect with you after this episode?
Yeah, you find me on LinkedIn. I'm definitely on LinkedIn. And then Instagram, Kareem, KareemJ Edwards, Kareem J. Edwards on IG.
Yes. And where can we come visit? Yeah, Chicago, right? Chick-fil-A.
Yeah, if you're in Chicago, pull up to Chick-fil-A South Loop. You'll see me or Jordan there. So pull up.
All right.
Might have some jerk chicken by the time you come.
Oh, okay. All right. So thank you so much, my dear friend, for being in the guest chair. And there you have it. I'll talk to y'all next week. Hey guys, thanks for listening to Side Hustle Pro. If you like the show, be sure to subscribe, rate, and review on Apple Podcasts. It helps other side hustlers just like you to find the show. And if you want to hear more from me, you can follow me on Instagram at Side Hustle Pro. Plus, sign up for my 6-bullet Saturday newsletter at sidehustlepro.co/newsletter. When you sign up, you will receive weekly nuggets from me, including what I'm up to, personal lessons, and my business tip of the week. Again, that's sidehustlepro.co/newsletter to sign up. Talk to you soon.